Hi everyone, my name is Akaya James and I'll be telling you about my week attempting to change my screen time. First, I would like to begin with my experience. Last week, my screen time averaged 10 hours and 45 minutes every day. The apps that I used the most were Safari, my browser, TikTok, Twitter, my books app, and Instagram. So why were these apps the ones that I used the most? Lately, I've been browsing Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist in search of a new car. I found myself mindlessly opening the Safari app often, seeing if there are any updates. I love TikTok and the creators who make funny videos, and I often find myself watching them when I lay in bed at night. Twitter is the way that I keep up with current events, as I have an aversion to the news. As an avid reader, I spend a lot of time in my books app, where I read the latest ebooks that I've bought and downloaded. And I use Instagram to keep up with the people around me. This week, I put down 2 tips that I would try to implement to reduce my screen time. The first was to change where I charged my phone. For as long as I can remember, I have charged my phone right under my pillow. This is a blessing and a curse. I use my phone as an alarm clock, which is helpful when it's right under my head. But also, it was easy to get up and just start scrolling my phone in the middle of the night. The next tip I decided to implement were no phone zones. I decided that I would no longer allow my phone in my bed at all, not even just at night. And also, I would no longer take my phone into the bathroom. I found that it was all too easy to go into the bathroom with my phone and sit there mindlessly looking at social media. I also found that whenever I took my phone into my bed, it made it harder for me to rest there later. Now, on to my analysis. This week, unfortunately, my screen time actually increased 32% to an average of 11 hours and 10 minutes a day. My biggest culprit in this increase in screen time is my reading habit. Every year I set a reading goal, and this year it was 50 books. I read several hours every day, and my phone is the main avenue to do so. I also avidly read fan fiction for my favorite fiction books, and that really bit into my screen time this week as well. Even though my screen time ultimately increased, I did learn things. For example, it was way easier to go to sleep this week. Without the constant blue light from my phone, I found it was easier for my brain to slow down and get ready to go to bed. With that in mind, I would definitely continue not to charge my phone in my bed or allow my phone in the bed at all. Though I've enjoyed not having my phone in my bed, something I've noticed is that it's a bit hard for me to hear my alarm across the room. I think that is the one detriment to my new habit. Without having my phone on me 24/7, I've also had a lot of time to think about culture, particularly among my generation, when it comes to our cell phone use. When I stopped taking my phone to bed, I realized that I was getting a little anxious about the thought of people contacting me and me not seeing it and responding immediately. I feel like I let people down when I don't immediately respond to text messages, or I miss phone calls, or even just DMs from Instagram or Twitter. When I thought about this more deeply, I began to resent our culture that tells you that people get to have access to you at all times just because they have your cell phone number or your social media handle. After the first 2 days, I definitely began to relish in the idea that I don't always have to be accessible for people to speak with me, and that I get to make my own hours. As professionals, we often say, "Hey, after 5 p.m., I am unavailable for you to speak with me." And I think that now I understand it is okay to have a boundary and say, "Hey, after 10 p.m., I am not available to speak with you, even as a friend or loved one. I believe that the cell phone culture of my generation definitely has an air of I'm missing something or they're missing me. Now, onto my recommendations. With my experience, I think that I would like to once again start investing in physical book copies. I read voraciously. I spend at least 3 hours out of every day reading a book that I'm really engrossed in, and I think it would really benefit me to have physical copies again. The reason that I haven't had any lately is because books are kind of expensive, and also, living in dorms, I often don't have the space to have them with me. I think that I would like to start buying the books that I really enjoy. I've also found that e-reading isn't necessarily as immersive as a physical copy because you can still get notifications or just click out of the book to go to a different app, which I think affects my experience. The next thing that I recommend for myself is to purchase a physical alarm clock. It will greatly reduce my need to have my phone near me at all times if I have a physical alarm clock to wake me up every morning to be out of the bed and get to work in time by 9 a.m. Besides my recommendations for myself, I recommend everyone to look up sleep hygiene practices. As someone who has always slept poorly and been the subject of multiple sleep studies, I'm very familiar with the concept. Part of sleep hygiene is developing healthy habits to help you go to sleep and stay to sleep at night. One of those can be limiting your technology use. I briefly mentioned earlier that I slept way better this week, and I really owe that to the fact that my phone was not right by my side. So please consider sleep hygiene. And that is the conclusion of my midterm disruption project.